Hello and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, it's just a few hours to D-Day as Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal is set to deliver judgment on Atiku Abubakar's petition challenging President Muhammadu Buhari's victory at the February polls. Former Minister of Petroleum Dezani Alison Madeke loses bid to retrieve jewelry worth $40 million seized by the EFCC and now forfeited to the federal government. Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed announces federal government's plan to borrow 1.7 trillion naira to fund the 2020 budget. And US President Donald Trump sacks National Security Advisor John Bolton.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's oil export hits 2.2 million barrels in August, despite outward exemption by OPEC.
And on sports news tonight, Nigeria qualifies for the 2019 CAF Under-23 African Cup of Nations in Egypt after defeating Sudan 5-0 in Asaba.
Hello, and from Abuja, Islamic movement in Nigeria defies police order, holds procession in Kaduna, trade words with police over alleged killing of members.
After 8 hours of legal battle, the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal says it's ready to deliver its verdict on the suit challenging the victory of President Muhammadu Buhari at the February the 23rd presidential election. The judges at the tribunal will rule on Alhaji Atiku Abubakar's suit and that of his party, the People's Democratic Party, tomorrow, Wednesday, September the 11th. The verdict is expected to lay to rest the long-drawn battle for the presidential seat. Well, that's if the case does not proceed to the Supreme Court.
Abubakar and the PDP had on 18th of March 2019 dragged the Independent National Electoral Commission, President Muhammadu Buhari, and the All Progressives Congress before the Justice Muhammad Garba-led tribunal, praying for the nullification of President Buhari's election on various grounds ranging from alleged non-qualification to stand for the election, election malpractice, alteration of election results, and violence, amongst others. In the final address presented by his lead counsel, Dr. Levi Uzwoku, the PDP candidate drew the attention of the tribunal to a portion of his INEC form where he claimed to have 3 different certificates, comprising primary school leaving certificate, WAEC certificate, and officer's cadet certificate.
And this is unthinkable.
Mr. Abubakar therefore urged the tribunal to nullify the participation of Mr. Buhari in the election on the grounds that he lied under oath to deceive Nigerians and to secure unlawful qualification for the election. The PDP presidential candidate also faulted the claim by INEC that it has no central server, adding that the server is a storage facility, including a computer, where database of registered voters, number of permanent voters cards, and election results, amongst others, are stored for reference.
Section 151 entitles us to have access to this material. We are not asking the court to decide on the issue whether there's a server or not. We are not even asking the court to go. All we are saying, allow us access to inspect materials used by INEC.
However, INEC, represented by Yunus Usman, asked the tribunal to dismiss the petition with substantial cost because the electoral body conducted the election in total compliance with the Nigerian Constitution and Electoral Act 2010. And urged the tribunal to dismiss the petition.
Since issues have been joined, they cannot delve into those issues now before trial. Perfectly so, because these are the issues to be tried. You can't try them piecemeal.
In his defense, President Buhari, through his counsel, Mr. Wole Olanikbekun, argued that the PDP candidate, Atiku Abubakar's petition, was liable to be dismissed because it is lacking in evidence, merit, and substance, and that the petition is ill-advised and signified nothing. The APC, represented by Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, in his own submission, said the petition lacked quality evidence that could warrant the nullification of the election as pleaded by the petitioners, and urged the tribunal to throw out the petition as long as its hands can do with huge costs. The die is cast, and the tribunal will tomorrow pronounce its ruling in what has become months of legal contestation with intense public interest.
And while Nigerians await the verdict on the presidential election, the National Assembly Election Petitions Tribunal has continued to pull surprises with some of the judgments delivered. The latest is the nullification of the election of the Senate spokesperson, Mr. Dayo Adeyeye, as the lawmaker representing Ekiti South in the National Assembly. The judges of the tribunal unanimously declared former minority leader and candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Senator Biodun Olujimi, winner of the senatorial poll. Senator Olujimi had approached the tribunal, asking that she should be declared the actual winner of the election after scoring the highest number of lawful votes cast. She also claimed that the election was not conducted in substantial compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act, having been allegedly fraught with all manner of irregularities. The three-man tribunal, led by Justice D.D. Adek, therefore nullified the elections in some polling units to declare Senator Olujimi the authentic winner of the polls. Senator Olujimi polled a total of 54,894 to emerge victorious over Senator Adeyeye, who polled 52,243. Now let's stay with legal matters. A federal high court sitting in Lagos today granted final forfeiture to the federal government of $40 million worth of jewelry seized from the premises of the former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Dezani Alison Madike. Justice Nicholas Owewo ruled that the former minister had failed to show cause why the jewelry should not be forfeited to the federal government. Counsel to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Mr. Rotimi Oyedepo, had told the judge that the items, including wristwatches, necklaces, bracelets, bangles and earrings, were suspected to have been acquired with the proceeds of unlawful activities. An investigator with the commission, Rufai Zaki, in an affidavit put before the court, insisted that the jewelry was beyond the former minister's known and provable lawful income. The former minister, on her part, had challenged the seizure of the jewelry from her home by the EFCC. She also accused the anti-graft agency of entering her apartment illegally and taking the items without any court order. Meanwhile, the Anti-Graft Commission says its joint operation with the FBI targeted at intercepting internet fraudsters has produced arrests, seizures and several recoveries. The EFCC and the FBI say plans are underway to repatriate the proceeds from cybercrimes to the victims who suffered those losses.
To note that from August 12, 2019 to date, the collaborative Operation Rewired, coordinated by the EFCC in Nigeria as an impetus to our sustained operation on perpetrators of various computer-related frauds, have resulted in the arrest of 167 Nigerians for alleged computer-related frauds. We have also recovered from the arrested fraudsters the sum of $169,850 United States dollars, as well as the sum of 92 million naira. Also, 4 exotic cars, plots of land in choice areas in Lagos, and a property in Abuja were also recovered during the EFCC-FBI collaborative operations.
In 2018, the IC3, that's our global reporting internet, IC3 received 20,373 BEC, business email compromise complaints with losses of over more than $1.2 billion. The global goal of this operation is to send a message to all who participate in the BEC that they will be caught and persecuted regardless of where they are located.
To other matters now, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has described the National Livestock Transformation Plan of the federal government as a well-thought-out one to address the farmer-herders crisis. Professor Osinbajo was speaking during the launch of the program in Adamawa State, northeast Nigeria. He faults claims in some quarters that the program is synonymous with the Ruga program, adding the project is not initiated to favor one tribe to the detriment of others. The governor of Adamawa State, Umaru Fintiri, commends the initiative, which he believes will end the crisis. Meanwhile, the Fulani communities and farmers in the state see the program as a step in the right direction.
This is not over. Ruga was the project launched by the Ministry of Agriculture, and it created a problem when it was perceived that it was a plan to seize lands to create settlements for herders. This was not planned, designed, and approved by the governors and the president. The National Livestock Transformation Plan is one endorsed by all governors and can only be implemented with the full participation and consent of the governor and the people of the state. No state can be forced to participate. I'm pleased to note that Adamawa State has chosen to begin the implementation of the plan.
An objective of the NLTP include but not limited to transformation, safety and security, functionality, productivity and wealth creation, job creation, national growth, though the diversification of the economy with livestock as the hub. It is in line with this objective that my administration keyed into this laudable and political program.
Nigeria's former permanent representative to the United Nations, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, is blaming the political elite for the current security situation in the country. The former diplomat alleges that the political elite initiate the crisis for selfish reasons, noting that they fail to learn from history and are constantly fanning the flames of disaffection among citizens. He made the comments at a counter-terrorism and electoral violence summit organized by the Nigerian Army in Abuja.
Nigeria has had her fair share of terrorism and electoral violence, especially in the last decade. Some of these experiences have left a trail of deaths and destruction of properties. Part of efforts to find solutions to these security challenges is the reason why the Nigerian Army is holding this summit in Abuja. The Chief of Army Staff sets the tone by listing some national peacekeeping efforts by the Nigerian military.
Personnel of the Nigerian Army are deployed in all the geopolitical zones of the country to assist the Nigerian police and by extension the civil authority in keeping the peace. We have made significant progress in ensuring that lives and properties of the citizens are secured.
Nigeria's former permanent representative to the United Nations, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, delivers the keynote address and blames the nation's security situation on the elites.
We have to ensure that our political elite learn from history. They must stop fanning the embers of hatred and animosity and ethnicity for selfish political and financial ends. Because such attitudes are not typical of nations that created strong national identity within its policy and among its people. The sections of our national elite, the political elite, they are like the Bourbons of France. We seem to have learned nothing and forgotten nothing. Because if we have learned something, if we have forgotten something, we will not very flippantly be sounding the trumpets of war.
Some participants at this summit also highlight the negative effect of electoral violence and acts of terrorism on Nigeria's economy.
The magnitude of the negative impact and the threat of terrorism, insurgency, and electoral violence in Africa have continued to be a great concern to our leaders, especially in the areas of achieving AU Agenda 2063, the Africa we want.
The consensus at this summit is that the solution to ending violent clashes in the country rests on the shoulders of the political elites, who must, as a matter of urgency, desist from fanning the embers of hatred for selfish gains.
In part 2, after the break, we'll open discussions on comments by the Finance Minister on the federal government's plan for a 1.7 trillion naira to fund the 2020 budget. And we'll be joined by the Director of the Centre of Social Justice, Mr. Ezra. In a moment, stay with us.